Good morning. I would like to talk to you about assessing ethical impact of sharing nanosafety data or of not sharing nanosafety data. After a brief introduction, I will explain a bit about the ethical impact assessment methodology I use. Then on the issues I identified, how it was evaluated on the framework by the framework of ethical theories, and also to stimulate some discussion about draft recommendations for remediating possible negative consequences. Yes, there is a sort of international movement for stimulating the open publication of research data, and this is stimulated both by governments and by researchers. While it can be any kind of data from any kind of research, but in my presentation I focus on data on environmental health and safety issues, and in particular about nanomaterials. In our studies we found that decisions of sharing nanosafety data or of not sharing nanosafety data after research could raise ethical issues, and we identified and analyzed these issues and drafted recommendations for how to remediate possible negative consequences using online ethical impact assessment tools. So this is a screenshot of our website where we posted the ethical impact assessment tools. These tools are, well, they're based on a procedure which was not invented by me, so we adapted standard published by the European Standardization Organization (CEN), and that's called CEN Workshop Agreement on Ethical Impact Assessment, which was developed in the European-funded Satori project. In our project RISCON, we adapted or applied these ethical impact assessment procedures to the case of nanomaterials and nanomaterials used in products, and also to develop online tools to help a user pass through the different stages of this ethical impact assessment procedure. So the methodology, this process consists of 6 steps. You start by a threshold analysis. This can be a project coordinator of a project where nanomaterials are developed or applied, and coordinator basically uses a tool to make a self-assessment of foreseen ethical impact, and this is used to determine the need for and scope of the ethical impact assessment. Then, if the issues identified are severe enough or are significant, a plan has to be made of the resources needed, which methodologies you will use, and how you engage with stakeholders to identify and analyze the ethical issues. Then, basically using desk research, you identify ethical issues by taking a bit more in-depth analysis of the issues, also trying to compare it with studies known in the literature. Then you evaluate the identified ethical issues with the help of philosophical ethical theories, but you should also engage stakeholders to make sure that your assessment of the severity of ethical issues is also shared by others, especially by people who are working in the field or are, who have to deal with the consequences of the, in this case, the publication of nanosafety data. Then in the end, it's not just an academic exercise. You really draft some recommendations to remediate possible negative consequences. But then it's very important to also discuss these draft recommendations with stakeholders. And finally, to make sure that that the quality of the ethical impact assessment you performed is good, you have to ask an external ethicist to review the whole procedure and the outcome. So I applied our online ethical impact assessment tools on this case study of whether or not nanosafety data should be published online openly. And for screening, I used a checklist of 9 categories of negative ethical impacts: health-related issues, privacy issues, liberties, impact on equality, on the common good, on the environment, on sustainability, and on military dual use and misuse. And we, using this checklist, which is very general, allowed to determine the scope of the full-scale ethical impact assessment, and it helped to select which ethical impacts were deemed relevant to decision-making on whether and how to share nanosafety data. And we estimated the severity of each issue on a 5-point scale. And well, the tool helps to sort of identify or advise on which kind of ethical impact assessment you have to do. So it's either no ethical impact assessment, or a small, medium, or large scale ethical impact assessment. And a small scale ethical impact assessment will be appropriate. So then we used a more detailed checklists to identify in literature possible ethical issues, and also to make an estimate of the severity of each issue. And then, well, we performed the analysis both for the case when data was shared and when data was not shared. Both could raise ethical issues. And in my estimate, the overall severity of not sharing nanosafety data tends to be stronger, but the balance between impacts of sharing or not sharing nanosafety data can differ in a particular case. And of course, it's my expert estimation of the severity of each case, so this estimation of the strength of each impact is open to discussion. Yeah, so sort of guide this making an estimate of how severe each issue is. I used a 5-point scale, like I said. So basically, well, 6 because 0. You can also think that this issue is not applicable in this case, like for instance in military dual use. So the nanomaterial of nanoproduct has no effect on this ethical issue, so then it's not no. But if you do think there is an issue, then it can be minor, and that which means that effects are very unlikely or have very low potential strength. You could, for instance, think about the frequency of this ethical impact is less than once in 100 years, or only a few people are likely to be affected temporarily and reversibly, or the new technology does not significantly worsen or improve ethical impacts caused by existing alternatives. Then when you think it's more than minor, perhaps it could be moderate. The effects are unlikely and or have mild potential strength. An example could be that the impact may happen a few times in a lifetime, or few people are likely to be affected mildly for a long time or irreversibly, or many people are likely to be affected temporarily and reversibly, or the new technology noticeably worsens or improves ethical impacts caused by existing alternatives. So it's always a relative scale. And well, it's more than that, so effects could be medium. And then the effects are substantially likely or have substantial potential strength. For example, the ethical impact is expected to occur several times in a lifetime, or at least a few people are likely to be affected substantially for a long time or irreversibly, or the new technology substantially worsens or improves ethical impacts caused by existing alternatives. And if you think it's even more than that, then it could be strong. So the effects are likely or have potential strength, high potential strength. And this ethical impact will occur frequently, or many people are likely to be affected strongly for a long time or irreversibly, or the new technology seriously worsens or improves ethical impacts of existing alternatives. And if you think that it's even more than that, then the effects are very likely or have very high potential strength. For example, the high ethical impact occurs permanently. Many people are affected strongly and irreversibly, or fundamental human rights are violated, or large-scale impacts on the society and the environment are expected. Okay, so that's about the benchmark. And then if I sort of looked at the literature on sharing nanosafety data or comparable cases, then I found that not sharing the data raises strong effects on the equal distribution of risks and hazards. That would be a 4 of the 5-point scale. And the main reason is that there are existing inequalities in health, so workers and consumers who are exposed to nanomaterials can have negative health effects. So they are more at risk than people who are, for instance, managers or who are not exposed to the nanomaterials. These health inequalities can be reduced if sound nanosafety data are used to improve the regulation to protect their health. So the question is basically, so my estimate is that this is very strong, so it has a strong effect on the equal distribution of risks and hazards. But you could think that it's less severe or even more severe. Then not sharing nanosafety data. So then there are also two issues which I think are medium severely. And so if you don't share nanosafety data, this could have medium effects on limiting the health risks of nanomaterials, because the disclosing such information is closely linked to the right to know, and this is one of the basic human rights defined by the United Nations. So it has a clear effect on basic human rights, which I base on a report by UNEP. And the effects are substantially likely and have substantial potential strength, and data sharing substantially improves the ethical impacts caused by existing publication practices. So it really just openly sharing nanosafety data can help a lot in limiting the health risks of nanomaterials. Also, well-being and interests of individuals and groups in society, including the quality of work, has a medium effect, and also replicating and building upon existing research. Because if you regulators undelayed access to sound nanosafety data, you can help them to come to a conclusion on evidence-based regulation of nanomaterials sooner. And so the effects are substantially likely, and at least a few people are likely to be affected substantially for a long time. And data sharing substantially improves the ethical issues compared by existing publication practices. So it has a medium effect on the well-being and interests of individuals and groups. And not sharing the nanosafety data could raise moderate effects, so that's 2 on the 5-point scale. On the limiting of environmental impacts of nanomaterials. It delays the emergence of in silico risk assessment, and extends the use of animal testing. So I based that on literature I found, and I estimate that these effects have mild potential strength because data sharing noticeably improves the ethical impacts caused by existing publication practices. Not sharing nanosafety data moderately delays achievements of the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is the achievement of the sound management of chemicals throughout their life cycle, so that by the year 2020, so that's 3 years ago, chemicals are produced and used in ways that minimize significant adverse impact on the environment and human health. It has not quite been reached, but if you share the nanosafety data, you could contribute to achieving this goal. I think the effects have mild potential strength because data sharing noticeably improves the ethical impacts by existing publication practices. And imposing restrictions on sharing nanosafety data which could be misused by others may negatively affect academic freedom. Well, I think the ethical impacts are minor because they have very low potential strength. Only few people are likely to be affected temporarily and reversibly. Data sharing does not significantly improve the ethical impacts caused by existing publication practices. So the issue exists, and you share the data sooner or later and or more extensively, doesn't really matter. Sharing nanosafety data raises moderate impacts, so that's the other the reverse of the issue. So now you do share nanosafety data, but this also can have moderate impacts on intellectual property rights, where researchers in resource-poor settings are nudged into sharing hard-won nanosafety data. I think the effects have mild potential strength because on the one hand, data sharing noticeably worsens the ethical impacts caused by existing publication practices, where results can be shared in academic literature without access to all research data. And then the scientists producing the data have more time for further analysis of their proprietary data. This is especially in the interest of researchers who have less resources to do their research. On the other hand, sharing nanosafety data raises moderate impacts on social justice and equality, especially because the distribution of economic resources to do the research may be unbalanced. This can be more severe if it's not clear who pays for the open access. So researchers in resource-poor settings could be disadvantaged if they are forced to share their research data they collected slower and with less advanced equipment than peers in better resourced labs. But the effects have mild potential strength, and many disadvantaged researchers are likely to be affected temporarily and reversibly. Then I foresee moderate dual-use impacts. Some nanosafety data could be misused for biological or chemical weapons, and the effects are unlikely on the current nanosafety research practices. And it not only depends on the public availability of the data, but also on the presence of educated experts with harmful intentions. Then at the same time, people misinterpret insufficiently verified nanosafety data. This could contribute to environmental health and safety risks, and it could be used to support false claims. But I think the effects are unlikely if people misinterpret data in good faith, so it's possible to tell them and convince them to make the correction. But the risks could be more severe if the data are intentionally misinterpreted. On the other hand, it's not likely to significantly worsen the ethical impacts caused by existing publication practices. So it is a problem which already exists, but yeah, sharing the nanosafety data does not have a very strong effect on that. On the other hand, a significant societal risk is that the cost of sharing nanosafety data will prevent societally useful science from being done. So basically, you can only spend your euro or real once. So if you have to spend more time and resources on sharing nanosafety data, you can't put it in new research. And so then, after sort of making this inventory of expected ethical issues, both of sharing and of not sharing nanosafety data, it's now time to make the analysis to evaluate the ethical issues. And in this core part of this ethical evaluation is to balance trade-offs between the different ethical principles which are at stake if you decide to share nanosafety data or not to share it. And it's also important to take remediation measures to reduce the negative ethical impacts of the decision to share or not share nanosafety data. So if you look at it, assuming that you want to share nanosafety data, then this could have negative effect on intellectual property, on social justice, on dual use, and on animal ethics. But on the other hand, it can have benefits for public health, environmental ethics, and animal ethics. Yeah, so you can also to improve the benefits and by taking remediary action to counter some of the expected risks. So one of the trade-offs which are identified is that the interest of public health can sort of collide with social justice. So to make sure that people in disadvantaged researchers have the same opportunity as more resourced researchers. And then Bezuidenhout made recommendations to address binds of place between better and less resourced scientists in the open data discourse. And she recommends to not just discuss the data, but also to discuss the laboratory equipment and research speed, to include all the aspects of a research environment where people have to do their work, and also to engage scientists in lower middle income countries. So make sure that they're involved in the decision making, and also to adopt frugal or responsible design principles in future open data initiatives. So this is a matter for discussion. Are you agreeing with this recommendation? Do you think it makes sense, or do you think it will not help? And another trade-off is between publishing open data and concerns for possible dual use aspects of the published data. Then Bezuidenhout and Morrison sort of recommend to not just look at it as very black box issues, but to balance the responsibilities for open data and dual use. Also, not only addressing the responsibility of scientists, but also of governments, of other actors in society who can also contribute to preventing dual use and fostering open data, and also to focus more on the everyday practices of laboratory scientists to sort of make sure that prevention of misuse or is more integrated in the practice and less focus on abstract conceptions of what is data. So do you think that will help, or is it not good enough? I would like to know your views. And the third recommendation is addressing the management of research organizations. They could raise the awareness of research integrity principles and train researchers in best practices in their organization. And so this, of course, research integrity is broader, but it also helps to make sure that the quality of the data is better, and so that what you share is actually useful in society. And if you are a researcher or a manager of a nanosafety research organization and you collaborate with researchers in developing countries and also with freelance researchers, it's recommended to implement the Trust Code, which is a global code of conduct for equitable research partnerships, with 4 main principles, so fairness, respect, care, and honesty. And these principles are then also subdivided in very practical recommendations for what to do in each context and how to make sure that people, also the researchers in developing countries, benefit from the research collaboration. And then the 5th one is more focused on those research projects where animals are used. Of course, we all know that researchers using animal tests should comply with the 3 R's: reduce, refine, and replace. And in this case, it can be important to replace animal testing not only with in vitro methods, which are more common, but also to new methods like in silico methods. So this is a recommendation which could be valid for some researchers working with or producing nanosafety data. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to discussing with you.